In my last video, I did some modifications to my Beretta 92 to make it what I consider a better carry gun. Now, in that video, I changed out the mainspring here, the hammer spring. I changed out the recoil spring. I changed out the trigger spring. And I also did some other things like changing out some plastic parts like the safety and the trigger for metal parts. After I posted that video, there were some questions people had. The first question a lot of people had was, well, why would I want to buy a gun where I have to change all that stuff on it just to make it a good gun? Well, you don't have to change anything on a Beretta to make it a good gun. It's a good gun right out of the box. In fact, it's a great gun right out of the box. I just prefer the metal pieces. They don't function any better. I just prefer them, so I change those out. And as for the trigger, it's got a perfectly good trigger in it right off the bat, a great trigger actually, but I like it to be a little bit lighter. Like I said, it kind of comes with a combat trigger. I want a self-defense trigger in it, so I changed that out because of personal preference. So no, it isn't like a Glock. You don't have to change everything on it out of the box just to make it a halfway decent gun. Out of the box, it's an amazing gun, but if you want to, you can do some minor modifications very easily to it to make it better for you, to make it suit your preferences better. Now, another question I was getting quite a bit though after I did the changes was, what were the trigger weights before and after? You didn't show us trigger weights. Well, I wasn't really showing trigger weights that video. I was showing more the process of actually making the changes. But I thought I'd take a moment today to address, how did it really change the trigger? How did it affect the trigger? What are the real differences? Well, I can't go back and undo the changes on this one, where I could, but I'm not going to. So I can't really show you before and after on this gun, but I can do something else. I can use my Beretta 92 Inox here that I haven't done the modifications yet to as a starting point. I can take trigger weight measurements on this gun and compare them to the other gun that I've already done the mods on. And then to take it a step further, I can actually do the same modifications on this one and measure the trigger weights afterwards and do a before and after comparison. That should give us a good idea of what the before and after was on the other gun, and it'll give us a definite idea of what the before and after is on this gun, so you can see if those changes are worth making for you. Now, the first thing we have to do is measure the trigger weights of both guns now before I do the changes, so let's get started. Now, on the non-modified gun, I'm averaging about 10¼ pounds for the double action pull and about 5¾ pounds for the single action pull. On the modified gun, I'm averaging about 8 pounds for the double action pull and about 4½ pounds for the single action pull. Now, I could make this trigger even lighter if I wanted to, because I have an 18-pound spring in here. The stock is a 20, and what they call the D spring is a 16. So I went kind of in the middle. So I could make this a little bit lighter. If you put the D spring in there, it'll often take the double action pull down to about 7½ to 8 pounds, and take the single action pull down to about a crisp 4 pounds, maybe even a little bit lighter. But I like it right where it is. So now what we got to do is do the mods on this gun and then measure the weights on it after we do the modifications. Now, one thing I do want to add about these two guns is they are both fairly well-used guns. They are older guns, so they've been what you would call worn in. If you're testing a new out-of-the-box gun, your measurements might be a little different. But once you get some rounds downrange with the guns, you should get similar readings to what I'm getting. Okay, now that it's been modified as well, I'm getting pretty much the same readings out of this gun as I did the other one. It's got about an 8-pound double action pull, and the single action pull is reading in at about between 4.3 and 4.5 pounds. So it might be a touch lighter than the other gun, but very, very similar. So I hope that answered everyone's questions about what differences you will actually see if you do that trigger job. So if you want to leave a Beretta stock right out of the box, don't blame you whatsoever. They're great right out of the box. But if you want to make a little bit of a modification to it to make it a more perfect gun for you, go right ahead. As you can see, it's easy to do, and you can actually get some pretty good results.